is really a twofold event. Just the Shabbos, the 3rd of Tammuz, is the yahrzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, his 21st yahrzeit. And as well, many of us, I think everyone here, has something to do with Friday experiences with the Bochurim, the Rabbinical students who come every week and join us at our workplaces, at our business offices. And so we, some of us are leaving after 2 years, so we made a little appreciation, and thank you all for coming. Really, these two parts, both the Rebbe and the Bochurim, are not two separate ideas. Really, they're one and the same. The inspiration behind these boys that come out to your office every week, rain or shine, whatever the weather's like here in crazy Melbourne weather, and more importantly, that many of them, if not all of them, never actually saw the Rebbe. And those who did, myself, I was too young to remember. And it's an incredible thing that after so many years, when we don't see the Rebbe physically, nevertheless, the boys keep on that inspiration, and what the Rebbe's taught them has continued them on. So really, these two ideas are connected. In the words of the former chief rabbi of the Commonwealth, Dr. Jonathan Sachs, he says that good leaders create followers, great leaders create leaders. And this is an incredible thing. You have boys that are just around teenage or a little bit older than that. And in the world today, people at the age of teenage years are doing all types of things, and these boys take off their free time. This is the only day they have free time, on Fridays. And they have a very, very rigid schedule. Early in the morning, 7 o'clock, we start every morning, till late at night at 9:30. And they're doing a lot of studying, a lot of intense learning of Torah, mitzvahs, and they take off their free time to join you guys at your workplaces and together do mitzvahs. So really, the inspiration they have is from the Rebbe. To get things rolling right on time, we're going to have the pleasure of hearing from Rabbi Moshe Kahn, who leads the Chabad Youth Organization, which is an organization that's responsible for many, many beautiful programs throughout the community, summer camps. We have the Chabad on campus, all types of programs throughout the year for young and old. And it's a true pleasure to have Moshe here share with us some words about the meaning today of the boys, the Mivtzoim, the Jewish outreach we do, and what the Rebbe means today to all of us. And Moshe is also someone that's very involved and behind Mivtzoim. So without further ado, we'll ask Moshe Kahn to share some words.
Thank you, Martin, for those kind words. So I'll say Bochurim, men, but there's no women. Hi, my name is Moshe Kahn. I've been privileged to be in Australia now for 18 years. I've been in Melbourne for 16 years, and as Martin kindly said, I've been running Chabad Youth for the last 16 years. People often ask me, why? How and why? And I guess tonight I'm going to speak to the Bochurim and to our guest, but to all of us, because it's a good question, and it's a question that I ask myself quite often also. What was it that inspired a generation really, and continues to inspire a generation? People that have met the Rebbe, people that never met the Rebbe, people that met the Rebbe once, and yet years later are still being driven by this goal, still being driven by this dream. What was it? When I was a little child, I was privileged to go to the Rebbe a few times. But I can't really say that I knew the Rebbe. I met the Rebbe, I received a dollar from the Rebbe a few times. I, together with thousands of other people, watched the Rebbe dance with the Torah and Simchas Torah. But to say that I had that relationship with the Rebbe one-on-one, I can't say that. And yet, somehow, I got inspired by the Rebbe. So I want to share with you, if I can, a few stories, a few things that happened to me in my life. And hopefully will inspire all of us to understand what was it about the Rebbe that he was able to inspire generations of people. When I was a child of about, before my mitzvah, I was probably 12 years old. I remember fondly going with my father, Mivtzoim. But the way the Bochurim, they come every single Friday. My father used to go on Yom Tov. He would walk to hospitals, sometimes 2-3 hours each way, and he would blow the shofar for people, or go and check the lulav and the esrog. And I remember one year, we walked to the city, and it was a long walk. It was a 2.5-hour walk each way, and it was raining, and I remember it clearly. I was a bit of a grumpy mood. I wasn't excited. You know, walking 2.5 hours, and here we are, schlepping. But it was also beautiful. I remember walking, holding my father's hand, and he's telling me stories, and we come to the hospital. My father had this shtick that we had to start from the top floor. He said, you always do what's hardest first. And we would run up. My father was a fit man, and he liked exercise also. He would run up to the top floor, and we started our walk down, going floor by floor, asked the nurses any Jewish patients, and there was always, unfortunately, quite a few, and that's what we did. I remember walking inside a room, and there's an elderly lady lying down in the bed. I was 12 years old, and I remember sort of standing a bit in the shadows of my father. My father comes in, good Yom Tov, and this lady looks up, and she bursts out crying. And I'll never forget the scene. It's etched in my memory. And I'm standing there, and I'm a bit taken back. Why is she crying? Maybe she's not happy to see us. And she motions to me. She says, come, come. I'm a bit bashful. I wasn't sure what to do. My father says, go, go, go. And she says to me in Yiddish, come my kind, come my child. And I come forward, and she's lying there in bed and she's crying. And she says, I want you to know, I have never, ever missed a shofar. I have never missed hearing a shofar. And this year, I'm lying in bed here, and I can't go to shul. And I thought I wasn't going to hear the shofar. I remember my father blowing the shofar, and she was crying. My father went back to her a few times after, and she passed away a few weeks later. And I'll never forget, as we left the hospital room, my father was quite emotional. My father was not an emotional man. And he said to me these words that probably had one of the deepest impacts in my life. He said, Moshe, this is the gift of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That you were able to bring simcha. You were able to bring joy to this old lady. Here she was in this hospital, alone. She was really alone. And she was crying that she was going to have a Rosh Hashanah, she was going to have a Jewish New Year, without hearing the shofar. Yet we walked in, and she was crying, not tears of sadness, but tears of joy. And it had a tremendous, tremendous impact. I remember feeling something special. I fast forward quite a few years, and I was part of a story that sometimes it's too hard to believe these stories, except I'm telling it to you firsthand. The story's been printed, and it's one of those stories that when you realize what actually happened, you can't even believe it. This was after the Rebbe passed away, and as a young Lubavitch student, there's confusion, there's mixed emotions, you don't really know about the future, what's going to be. And I was working for my uncle. My uncle's a shliach in New Jersey, and I was working for him running a camp. That was my introduction to camps. I was a young bacher, I was 17 years old and I was already a head counselor of his camp. And we loved it. It was great, great fun. And I really loved my uncle, still do. And he was a tremendous inspiration in my life. He built, which if any of you ever go to New Jersey, I strongly encourage you to go and check it out. He built the most magnificent, beautiful Chabad on campus. There's a university called Rutgers University. There's 8,000 Jewish students on campus. You can imagine the size. Melbourne has 50,000 Jews. There's 8,000 Jewish students on campus. Every single Shabbat he has, literally without exaggeration, 500 students Friday night, 500 Shabbos day. It's the most amazing thing what's going on there. He built in the early 90s, he started building the most beautiful Chabad in the heart of campus. It's called College Avenue. And if you can imagine, you've got the main library, the main lecture halls, and you've got the Chabad there. I'm not exaggerating. Center Road, the main place, the Chabad is there. Unfortunately, he ran out of funds. Typical good Chabad story. Here he is building this Chabad house. Back then it cost $5.5 million to build. Today $5.5 million is a lot of money, but back then it was even more. And August, the year started, academic year started, and part of the Chabad, it's a 5-story building, has a dormitory for students to live in. Unlike here, students live on campus, on uni, and it's a lot of challenges with that. So he built a dorm so people could have a protective lifestyle, if you like. There's a dining room that feeds hundreds of students daily. That's the only kosher food on campus. And it was really important that he gets his permits to open up on time. Unfortunately, because he ran out of funds, the builder, his name is Danny Cohen, said to him, Rabbi, I love you, you're a great guy, but I'm not finishing this building until I get my money. What could I tell you? He went around everywhere he possibly can to get these funds. As I said, I was working for him in camp. One of the things he did besides working with uni students, he had camps. And I remember how stressed he was. I've never seen him so stressed. He wasn't thinking, he wasn't with it, he didn't know what he was doing. He was on the phone all day, going to meet people, trying to pull things together. Nothing was working. He was very close to Rabbi Groner, who was Rebbe's personal secretary. Today, Rabbi Groner is the outside also, and it's Rabbi Groner's brother. And he called him up and said, do you have any leads for me? I'm desperate, please. Do you know anyone? Do you have any connections? Someone, something? And Rabbi Groner said, no, I'm sorry, I don't, but look, I promise you, if I hear something, I will definitely let you know. It was Saturday night, I'll never forget this, in the summer. Shabbat goes out something around 9:30 at night. I remember this is midnight. I'll never forget the scene. I'm sitting in his office, it was in his basement of his home, and he's sitting there by his desk, making phone calls, and I'm sitting at this little couch in the study in his office, and I was just watching him. I liked watching him. And he's phoning people, he's trying, and the phone rings at midnight. It's Rabbi Groner on the phone, and he says, hello, how are you? Yeah. He says, do you have a mikveh in your Chabad house? Now, as I said to you, it's a 5-story building. In the basement of this building, there was literally a concrete slab, and in the corner, there was a hole in the ground where a mikveh was going to be built. And as I told you, my uncle had ran out of funds, and the mikveh wasn't a real priority. The priority was to get the 3 center floors finished, because that's where the dorm was, that's where the dining room was, and the shul, and the offices. That's sort of what he really needed to get finished. The basement, he would do later on. So he said, yeah, but I don't need money for the mikveh. I need, He said, do you have a mikveh in your Chabad house? My uncle said, yes. He said, how much do you need to finish the mikveh? And my uncle wasn't thinking, he didn't have the figures in front. He goes, I don't know. He goes, just tell me how much you need to finish the mikveh. And my uncle said, I don't know, $800,000. He goes, okay, leave it with me, let me come back to you. You can imagine, my uncle's like, doesn't know what's going on. The phone rings back about 25 minutes later. It's Rabbi Brony again. And he says, I have a gentleman and he wants to come out and see your Chabad house. He might be interested in helping. Now, my uncle says, who is he? What is he? He said, here's his number, give him a call. He meant give him a call the next day. My uncle called him then and there. He calls him up, the guy answers the phone, and he said, yes, I want to come see your Chabad house. Pick me up tomorrow. He lives in Manhattan. The Chabad house is in New Brunswick, which is probably about an hour and a half drive from Manhattan. He says, pick me up tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I'm going to come see your Chabad house. Now, my involvement in the story, this is my full claim to fame, is that the grass was overgrown and my uncle was embarrassed and he told me, take my lawnmower, quickly go to the Chabad house and cut the grass. So that was my claim to fame, how I was involved. Anyway, my uncle goes the next morning, picks this guy up. I've got to share the story. When he comes to the Chabad house, he introduces me and he says, this is my nephew, the gardener, and the guy shook my hand and said, hi gardener, how are you? I think that's what clinched the deal, by the way. Anyway, the guy comes in, he's a young guy, very young, in his 20s, comes in the Chabad house. You walk inside, it's granite, it's beautiful, it's the most magnificent Chabad house. But the guy's not interested in seeing him. My uncle wants to take him to the shul. The shul was finished. He goes, let me show you the shul. He says, no, I'm not interested. Let me show you the dorm where the students are going to sleep. Let me show you the dining room. Let me show you the students' lounge. Whatever my uncle wants to show him, he's not interested. He goes, take me down to the basement. Now, as I explained to you, the basement is a concrete slab with a hole in the ground. There's nothing there. The guy says, take me down to the basement. That's what I want to see. Okay? He takes him down. And I remember following them downstairs. He goes into the basement, goes to the hole where the mikveh will be one day. And I've got a picture. I took a picture of that hole. There was no steps to go down, but there was a ladder, a wooden makeshift ladder. The man climbs down the hole, stands inside that literally pit, whatever you want to call it, for 20 minutes. Now 20 minutes might not seem like a long time, but I'm telling you, when you're standing there in silence, awkward silence, 20 minutes is a long time. And my uncle likes talking, he could talk, and he's trying to make conversation, but the guy's not talking. He said, come, I'll show you this, I'll tell you this. Nothing. And so for 20 minutes, literally, the guy's standing there, and he's crying. 20 minutes later, he climbs out of the hole, literally climbs out. He said, fine, I'm ready to go home. That's it. My uncle said, you don't want to see the rest of the building? He said, no, it's all good. Take me home. The driving home, when my uncle told me after, so I was thinking, this guy's an idiot. It's like I've wasted my whole morning. What's going on? I don't get it. He doesn't talk to me. He said, let me tell you my story. Let me explain to you what's going on. He said, I am a Guzini. Guzini is a town in Georgia, somewhat part of Russia. Sometimes part of Russia, sometimes not. And he said, I grew up there, and my parents wanted me to have a better opportunity in life. And so they did something quite amazing. They sent me off to Israel as a child, so I could study there, get a better education, and hopefully, have more opportunities. Now the Rebbe opened up a school that was called the Bet Sefer LeMelacha, which is a school that taught kids not only, the regular studies, but also a trade. There was how to be a carpenter, how to be a printer. I remember there was a whole computers even now, but this was, sort of preceded that. They had all different things that they, all different trades they would teach. He said, I went there pretty young, and one day it just hit me. He's telling this to my uncle, that someone is paying for this. And I went up to my teacher and said, who's doing this? Who's organizing this? I want to thank that person. My teacher told me, if you want to thank anyone, thank the Rebbe. He opened up this school. This is what you do, write him a letter and say you're feeling very grateful, you want to acknowledge him, you want to thank him, and send him the letter. And that's what he did. Because my teacher told him he probably won't get a letter back, but do it anyway. He said, I sent a letter and I got a response acknowledging my letter and thanking me. So I wrote Rebbe another letter, and I got a response again. So he said, I started a dialogue with the Rebbe. I would continuously write him letters, and the Rebbe wanted to know how I'm going in my studies, and I would always tell him. He said, when I turned 18, I had this deep passion to make a lot of money. He said, so I wrote to the Rebbe and said, I want to move to America because I feel I will have a better opportunity over there. And he said, I moved to America, and I met the Rebbe now for the first time in my life. He said, I walked past the Rebbe for dollars. The Rebbe would have this custom, as I'm sure you know, of giving out dollars on Sunday. And he said, I walked past the Rebbe and I told the Rebbe my name. And I was sure the Rebbe wouldn't know who I am. And right away the Rebbe knew who he was. Listen to this unbelievable thing. He tells the Rebbe, I want to be your business partner. I know I'm going to be successful then. But it wasn't a typical request. And the Rebbe said, yes, no problem, on one condition. You have to promise that you will always give Moshe, you will always give 10% of the earnings to tzedakah. They shake hands, they have a deal. The guy continues the story. He said, I started doing business, I kept my part of the deal, the Rebbe kept his part of the deal. Things were going well. He said, I got married at the age of 23 with the Rebbe's blessing. And he said, I had a little baby. And unfortunately, the baby was born with a hole in his heart. He said, I went to the Rebbe, crying, please, please, pray to God that the baby should be strong and well. The doctor said the baby's not going to make it. But this person believed and said, no, it's going to work out. The Rebbe gave him a blessing that the baby should be strong and well. And the baby made it. Fast forward 5 years, this baby is 5 years old. Here's where the story starts getting freaky. Tells my uncle in the car, he said, last Thursday, I went back to the aisle. This time, what happened was the baby got sick again. And the doctor said, we told you he's not going to make it. You had a miracle once. There's really no chance. And so I've been taking my son to every doctor, to specialists, and nothing. He said, last Thursday, at 4 o'clock, I went. This is now past. The Rebbe's already passed away. He said, I went to the Rebbe's grave. I went to the aisle, asking the Rebbe, please, pray to God to help my son. My uncle went to the aisle on Thursday also. The same time, Thursday at 4 o'clock, they both went there. Each one oblivious to the other people's concern. My uncle went to pray that he should somehow find the money for the Chabad house. This guy went to pray that his son should be well. Thursday, 4 o'clock, they were both at the aisle. Neither of them knew that the other one was there. He said, I came home Thursday and I felt things were going to be all right. He said, that night I had a dream. He said, in my dream, the Rebbe came to visit me. And the Rebbe said, you haven't kept your part of the deal. You haven't been giving my son. So he said, okay, what should I do? How should I do it? He said, go ask Rabbi Grona. So he said, in his dream, he went to Rabbi Grona, and he asked Rabbi Grona, what should I do? And he said, Rabbi Grona told him, I know of a mikveh that needs money. And took him in his dream to this mikveh and said, you should help finish this mikveh. And he said he woke up. He didn't know what to make of this dream. Sounds crazy. And he said all Friday It was just playing in his head, and Shabbat, he just didn't know, is it real, is it not real, what should I do? He said, I called my accountant on Friday, and I said, tell me how much money I owe to myself. How much money, how much, 10%, he had told his accountant initially to keep an account. He goes, how much money do I owe for this 10% to charity? His accountant told him, you owe $800,000. Come Saturday night, he decided, I'm going to call Rabbi Broner. I'm going to ask him if he knows of a mikveh that needs to be finished. If he does, and the amount that they need matches the amount I owe to charity, I know this dream is real, I'm going to give the money. He called Rabbi Broner on Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos, and said, you know of a mikveh? Rabbi Broner doesn't know of one offhand, but he knows of my uncle. I just asked him if he knows of any leads. He says, wait, let me call you back. He called my uncle. He goes, how much do you need for the mikveh? The man had told Rabbi Broner, asked him specifically. My uncle said, just off the top, $800,000. Rabbi Broner calls back this man, his name is Yaakov, and said, I know of a mikveh, and they need $800,000 to finish it. It's not the end of the story. The man said, I still wasn't convinced. In my dream, Rabbi Broner took me to a mikveh. I wanted to see if the mikveh that he took me to, the unfinished mikveh, is the same mikveh. And so I asked him to organize for me to come out. He said, you want to know why I haven't spoken the whole way? Could you imagine the emotion I'm thinking, my son, this dream? This is all happening. He said, it's surreal. He said, I walked into your Chabad house. I just wanted to see if that mikveh was the mikveh. He says, the mikveh your Chabad house is the mikveh I saw in my dreams. He was standing in that mikveh 20 minutes crying. He took my uncle, this is Sunday morning now, it's ready, lunchtime. He took my uncle back to his apartment, wrote out a check for $800,000, gave it to my uncle, and said, please invite me to the opening of the mikveh. My uncle called the lawyers, the builders. He said, come to a meeting tonight. Sorry, this was ready. They didn't come to a meeting the next morning. Monday morning, I've got something I want to tell you all. I went to that meeting. I'll never forget. My uncle got up, and he had all these people sitting around the boardroom. They were all stiff and angry, and it was, they thought they were going to have a negotiation. My uncle said, I just want to tell you all a story. And he shared with them this story, and he pulled out a check and he paid them $800,000. Danny Cohen, who's the builder, he now has a plaque, he wanted it. He stood up, this was not a religious Jew. He stood up, and I remember sitting there watching this, sitting on the side. I was second tier seating. Wasn't around the boardroom table, I didn't get a seat there, I was in the outskirts. And he said, if the Rebbe could want this building finished from wherever he is, I promise you we're going to have this building finished. At the opening of the Chabad house, which was very short, only a couple of months later, I was there. Rabbi Broner came and told the story. Yaakov came to the opening. The mikveh today is the most beautiful mikveh, and it's been dedicated in honor of the baby Yaakov, Yaakov's son. When you live through a story like this, I told you, if it would have not happened to me, if I would have not been there, if I would have not witnessed this firsthand, you could say it's not real. But I remember when this story happened, I made a promise. I want to be part of this team.